You're listening to the Love Over Addiction podcast. Hey guys, how are you? It is the second week of school for us, and I am feeling exhausted, to be truthful. I am tired. School is kicking my butt. It's funny going from this transition of coronavirus where nothing was going on and we were stuck in our homes and, going out was kind of scary sometimes. And then now it's feels like things are starting to pick back up again and routines are starting to happen and the structure feels really good in some sense. It feels good to be purposeful again, but also I'm wondering, okay, how much of the busyness pre-COVID do I want to allow back into our lives post-COVID? Because there was something, and I am not saying this, I realize people have died, so I hope this does not come across as insensitive. But I did find some sort of pleasure in the less busyness of it all. There was something nice about slowing down and waking up without 100 to-dos, for the day, and going from 90 miles an hour to 20 miles an hour. There was something that felt really wonderful about going back to basics about that. Again, I'm not trying to minimize anyone's pain or suffering. People lost their jobs. People died. People got very sick. I am aware and I understand that, and I recognize the privilege that I had not being, affected by this virus in that way. So I want to put that out there, but I am like feeling like the pedal is on the gas a little bit too much again, and I'm trying to figure out, okay, what can we remove, or are we going back to the new normal? Is this the new normal again? So that is what is going on with me. Little disclaimer there. And in the struggles of picking back up the pace again, my son, Henry, my sweet little 9-year-old, had a really rough week at school. And he and I had a really interesting conversation yesterday that I thought, I need to get on the podcast and tell you guys about it because I do think it would pertain to you all as well. So he has a new class this year. He's in 4th grade, and he got in trouble yesterday and got called out of the classroom for something that I didn't think was his fault, nor did he. And I am not one of those parents that, look, I got kids that definitely get in trouble and deserve to get in trouble. I know that about my children. And, but I think this was a bad call, and we all make bad calls, right? So bless his teacher. She's doing the best she can in a really stressful situation. But he came home. Henry is one of the most sensitive kids I know, and he tries very hard to be perfect all of the time. He puts an enormous amount of pressure on himself to not let people down, to always get, the best grades. He just has this weight on his shoulders that I've seen him carry around since he was a little boy, and I do believe it's innate, because if anyone knows me, they know I don't care about grades. I think it's self-inflicted pressure, which kind of reminds me of us too, to be honest with you. I was not a great student at all, but I do put a lot of pressure on myself to around my house with my family and with work, particularly, to have a very, very high bar. I have received that feedback from people, let's just say that. And sometimes it's helpful, and sometimes it's ridiculous, and it can run you into the ground and make you feel incredibly exhausted and broken, and it works against you. So my son has inherited this trait, unfortunately, and so every time he feels he disappoints somebody, he acts fine in front of them. So in the classroom, if he gets redirected or if he gets, spoken to negatively, he will look happy and like he's received it and has moved on. But internally, he feels completely ashamed. And he carries that shame with him until he gets in the car at the end of the day, a carpool, and he just starts crying and unloading. And I know this is a pattern with him. So at the beginning of the school year, I always say, listen, this is how Henry copes. You're not going to know that he's upset because he pretends that everything is fine. And then he comes home to his safe spot and to his safe people, and he lets it go. And so please, when you're teaching him, if you could, gentle and softness work best with Henry. Some of my other kids need, somebody who's a lot more strict and structured and kind of gets in their face a little bit. That works well for some of them. But for Henry, he just needs soft and kind, and he will do the rest of the work. Like, he gets it right away and redirects easily and wants to please. So it does sound like us, doesn't it? I mean, are you listening to the way I'm describing my kid and being like, yeah, me too? It's true. We all are people pleasers. We all are the type of people that really hold ourselves accountable to an incredibly high standard in most areas, if not all areas of our lives. We all are our worst critic and feel deep shame and embarrassment when we let people down. And we're working with a wonderful woman who is an OT, occupational therapist, to help him. And part of this feedback that I'm having with her is I feel like Henry just takes life a little too seriously and needs to loosen up and have a little bit more fun. And don't you feel like we could use a little bit more fun in our lives sometimes too? Don't you feel like sometimes we need to loosen up and have a little bit more fun? And I'm not talking about drinking or using drugs or anything like that. Like our loved ones sometimes, accuse us of being too stiff and we should have more drinks or whatever. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying sometimes we can allow this whole addiction stuff and this whole desire for change and feeling better. Sometimes we can take that sometimes way too seriously. And we just need to let go and loosen up and just forget about our problems and ways to improve and put down the self-help book and, stop trying so hard and just have fun and remember what it feels like to actually have fun in our lives again. Remember a time when you really let it go? I don't know what that is for you. What they talk about it being in the flow. I think that's a buzzword that's going on right now, which is when you're just having fun and time goes by so quickly. I remember watching an Oprah on TV, and she was interviewing George Lucas, and he was saying he used to sit, and when he was writing Star Wars, he would sit in front of the computer and write for so long. He'd look up at his clock and it would be, 7 hours later, and he had forgotten to eat, and he had forgotten, to get up and move because he was so in the flow of writing Star Wars. He was in his creative jam. And I just think that that's wonderful. That's the way we should feel. And so one of the questions I would ask you is, what is your flow? Like, what helps you? It could be yoga. It could be painting. It could be exercising. It could be hanging out with your girlfriends. It could be decorating. It could be writing. It could be anything. But what is it that just makes you forget about time and lets you just do your thing, do your purpose, do what what gives you joy? And let's do more of that, right? Let's add more of that stuff to our lives before we add all of the busyness again. And when Henry came home and he got into the back seat of the car and crumbled, just fell apart. My husband picked him up from school. I wasn't in there. I wasn't in the car. But he came home and I scooped him up and brought him into my bed and, cuddled with him and let him just cry and cry and cry. And I was listening to him, and afterwards we talked about what had happened. And I said, babe, you got to go back to school. And he said, I can't. I'm too embarrassed. I'm too ashamed, which just killed me, broke my heart for him. And I said, but listen, Henry, you are a courageous young man and you can do hard things. And he said, Mom, I'm not courageous. I'm sitting here crying like a baby about this. And I said, crying does not mean that you are not courageous. Courage means you cry and then you choose to pick yourself back up and try again. That's the courage. The courage is being willing to fall apart and keep trying and trying and trying. And I thought about us, and I thought being married to somebody that suffers from addiction is hard. And it takes tremendous courage. If there was one attribute that I could say would be the most helpful, it would be courage. And courage is not about leaving or staying. It's not about self-advocating. It's not about speaking up for yourself or learning when to keep a quiet mouth or all the other tools we talk about. The most important thing about courage is that you try, is that you recognize you don't have this mastered, and you shouldn't have this mastered because you've never done this before. You're learning as you go. This is a new position for you to be married to somebody with addiction. You've never been in the world of addiction before, or you've never been in love with somebody who suffers from addiction. You might have grown up with it in your household when you were younger, but you weren't in love. You didn't have this dynamic. So you shouldn't have the answers. You can't have the answers. You're learning as you go. Addiction is unpredictable, you guys. You can't rely on anything when you're married to addiction. Nothing is stable. Nothing is steady. There's no foundation. It's all rocky. And you don't know what you're going to get tomorrow or the next month or the next year. So how do you prepare for that? You can't. You have to take it one day at a time. That's why that slogan is so popular in AA, one day at a time. And so when things go wrong, when you make mistakes, because you will, and I will, and we all will for the rest of our lives, it doesn't matter if you fall apart or if your life is a mess or if you've got 1,000 things to do and you're procrastinating most of them. It doesn't matter how clean your house is or how well you're performing at your job or if your kids are a mess right now and not happy and doing poorly. What matters, what really needs to be held accountable is whether or not you are getting back up and trying again. That's the only thing that you should measure your success on, is not your tears, not your failures, not how put together your life looks, or if you're a hot mess most of the time like me. That's irrelevant. The outcomes are irrelevant. It's when you cry, when you come home and you crumble, when you fall apart, like Henry, like me sometimes. Are you dusting yourself are you dusting yourself off and picking yourself back up and continuing to try? If you have failed today, if you failed yesterday, if you failed last month, are you carrying around the shame of that failure? Or are you saying, I am a human being and I'm going to make mistakes and it's okay? I was telling Henry, look, you guys, I'm just going to be honest with you. I didn't handle the conversation with Henry. I did call Henry's teacher and say, hey, what happened? And can you give me some insight as to, what went on? And we ended it well, but I did get a little upset. And Henry said, why did you have to get upset? And I said, look, I'm a human being and I'm feeling things, and I was feeling very protective of you. And I made a mistake, and I apologized immediately if my tone had been come across as too harsh. And I have to say, I made a mistake in the way that I handled this. I was, when someone hurts your child, it really really, for me, it really causes me great concern. And so I apologized, and Henry said, what are you going to do about it? And I said, I did everything I was supposed to do about it. I apologized profusely. I wrote a letter in addition to that saying, I'm sorry, my tone probably was not appropriate and it will not happen again. I support you. We're in this together. Let's work through this. And what else can I do to help you? But also giving ourselves grace for when we make mistakes is so important, you guys. Let's all give everyone grace right now. Let's start with ourselves first and just say, I'm human. I'm going to make 1,000 more mistakes, and I know that. And I'm going to apologize when necessary and forgive myself and move on going forward. Try to do better. That's the best we can do. That's the best you can do. That's the best I can do. If we all just looked at each other and mostly ourselves and said, look, this isn't perfect. We're not going to navigate through this messy life with every step exactly where it's meant to be. If we set those expectations, I think the forgiveness for others and ourselves will come so much easier. And so to you who is in pain right now, I know you are in pain. I know this is not where you think your life should have turned out. I know that you are feeling alone and that you are comparing yourself to other people and saying, why didn't it turn out like that? Or why can't I have that? I know that there's a part of you that secretly blames yourself for what has happened. And all of those things are valid, and all of those things are okay to feel. But I am here to tell you in the most loving, kindest way, just to be gentle with yourself today and to get back up, dust yourself off, and continue to try. Do not give up. Do not stay hidden in a corner in your room falling apart and refusing to fight the fight, because you are worth it. Your future is worth it. Your dependents, if you have any, your children, are worth it. Sorry for the overhead. I'm outside. There was an airplane above, if you couldn't hear that. You are absolutely destined for wonderful things. And this is just a stage in your life where you are here. This is a pit stop, and you are learning what you need to learn. You are gathering tools. You are collecting information that's going to help you make really wise decisions in the future. This addiction is a gift. I know it doesn't feel that way because it comes with a lot of suffering and a lot of pain, but it is a gift and an opportunity for you to grow into the person that you are destined to become. It will shape your life in such a beautiful way if you allow it, and you don't give up on yourself, and you don't get stuck. And if you are the type of person where you, like my son, my sweet little son, this morning getting up for school, wanted to hide under the covers. You know, when I dropped him off this morning, he was walking into the classroom so slow. And you can just tell, you know, in his head that he was just mulling over everything. I mean, his mind was so heavy, and it was going so fast. And I know with every step that he was walking towards that classroom, it was more and more difficult the closer he got. But that was courage. He was moving forward. He was physically walking into a scary situation, but that was his way of dusting himself off and continuing to get up and keep trying. And if my 9-year-old can do it, I know you can do it. I know you can. And I want to be that safe spot for you where you can crumble with me, because I get it. I really, really understand exactly how you're feeling in my core. And I want you to be able to crumble with me. I want to be that safe person for you. And I also want to be the reminder daily that you absolutely have everything inside of you to dust yourself off and continue to try. And that there is no ultimate destination of perfection. It does not exist. I've read, you guys know, 1,000 self-help books. 1,000. I research every single day, all day. Not every single, that's an exaggeration, but you get it. A gazillion hours. And I learn and learn and learn and learn. I'm obsessed with learning. New tools. And the thing is, they all kind of, first of all, sound the same when you really dig down deep. And number one. And number two is, you can know everything in your head logically, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to apply everything you know at the exact right moment and the exact right time, all the time, every time. That's impossible. So I'm here raising my hand saying, I'm making mistakes right along with you. Right along with you. I'm human. So can we all just look around and look at each other and go, okay, it's okay that we're not okay sometimes. It's okay that we are imperfect. It's okay to remove this 50-pound weight that we are carrying on our shoulders about trying to make everybody happy and never disappoint and nail it every time and get the 100% effort and make up for all of the negativity in our youth and our childhood, and say, you know what, we're grown-ups now and we know better. We know that we are good enough as is, as long as we are continuing to try, pick ourselves back up and keep trying. Right? Yeah, I think so. So That's my tip for today. I love you guys. You've got this. You do. And it's going to be okay. You're going to be okay. You're going to get through this. I know you are. I am your biggest fan. I am your greatest cheerleader, and I believe in you entirely. I'll talk to you next week.
This podcast is created for your support, encouragement, and entertainment with Michelle's personal thoughts and beliefs. From one woman to another, bonded together by the fact we love someone suffering from addiction. This is not intended as a substitute for therapy or advice from a professional.